Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going somewhere a little different, a little unexpected. You ready for this?
I am, I think. So today we're stepping into the world of magic.
Exactly, but here's the thing. This isn't about fictional wands and wizards and all that. We're
Mm.
going deeper. We're looking at the idea of real magic.
Right. Digging into the historical practices, the modern interpretation.
Yeah, drawing from, all sorts of fascinating sources.
Oh, we've got a stack of books here
Yeah.
about witchcraft and magic spells and even some encyclopedia entries to give us that historical and cultural context.
So imagine this. What if spells and rituals and all that stuff weren't just fantasy? What if there's something more there?
It's a question that's been pondered for centuries.
And that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to see if these ideas, these practices might hold a key to understanding, ourselves and the world around us in a whole new way.
One of the things that's always fascinated me is how magic in all its different forms has been present across so many cultures and time periods.
Right? It's like a universal human thing.
It is, and it often gets intertwined with religion and spirituality. It becomes a way for people to connect with the unknown, to try to influence forces beyond their control.
I'm thinking about ancient Egypt, with their Book of the Dead.
Oh, that's a perfect example. The Book of the Dead, it's filled with all these spells that were supposed to help people navigate the afterlife.
So like a guidebook for the soul.
Exactly. And initially those spells were reserved for royalty, but as time went on, they became more accessible to commoners too.
Interesting. So it started as a privilege for the elite, and then everyone wanted in on the action.
It seems that way. It really highlights that human desire to control our own destiny, to tap into these unseen forces, even beyond this life.
Like everyone was searching for their own personal cheat code for the afterlife. But, magic has a darker side too.
Right.
We've all heard the stories about witches being persecuted.
Absolutely. That period, especially during the Middle Ages, it's a dark chapter for sure. It's unsettling to read about how people, particularly women, were targeted and accused of witchcraft, often based on fear and suspicion more than actual evidence.
Like people were so afraid of the unknown that they turned on each other.
There was a lot of fear and paranoia during those times, and women who were seen as powerful or different were often the scapegoats.
It's a reminder of how fear can distort our perceptions and lead to terrible things. But how does all of this connect to the modern era? Does magic still have a place in our world today?
Well, there's definitely been a resurgence of interest in magic, especially through movements like Wicca and other neo-pagan practices.
So these modern interpretations are drawing upon those ancient traditions, but adapting them for today.
Exactly. It's not a direct replica of the past, it's an evolution.
So let's talk about Wicca specifically. I know it's often described as a nature-based religion.
hmm
What does that actually mean? What do Wiccans believe?
For Wiccans, the divine isn't found in a distant heaven or a specific building. It's within the natural world itself. They see the trees, the oceans, the cycles of life and death as manifestations of something sacred.
So it's about finding the divine in the everyday and the world around us.
Yeah. And there's also a strong emphasis on balance, finding balance between masculine and feminine energies, between light and dark, between creation and destruction.
So it's not about one force being superior to another.
Not at all. It's
Ah.
about understanding how these seemingly opposing forces are actually interconnected and essential for harmony.
I love that idea of finding balance. It's a good reminder for all of us. And I've also heard about the Wiccan Rede, and it harm none, do what you will. It seems like a pretty straightforward ethical guideline.
It is. It's a core principle that encourages Wiccans to take responsibility for their actions and to strive to live in a way that doesn't cause harm to others or to themselves. It's about living in harmony with the natural world and recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
Now, when I picture someone practicing Wicca, I think about things like cauldrons, candles, herbs, crystals, all those things that we see in pop culture. But are those just for show, or do they actually play a role?
Wiccans do use those tools, but not in the way that Hollywood might depict. It's not about invoking supernatural beings or controlling them. The tools are more about focusing intention and connecting with the natural energies that are already present in the world.
So they're like physical reminders of the elements and forces that they're working with.
Exactly. Each tool has its own symbolism and purpose. Take the cauldron, for
Oh
example.
yeah, the cauldron. Like something a witch would use to brew a potion.
Right. Well, it actually started as a simple cooking pot in ancient times, but it's evolved into this powerful symbol of transformation in Wiccan practice.
It's interesting how something so ordinary can take on such a profound meaning. And what about herbs and crystals? I've always been fascinated by the idea that they might possess special properties. Is that something that Wiccans believe?
Many Wiccans believe that certain herbs and crystals possess unique energies that can be incorporated into their practice, particularly when it comes to spell work.
So it's not just about the physical properties of those things, but also the energy they hold.
Right, amethyst, for example, is often associated with calmness and tranquility, while elecampane is believed by some to attract love.
So it's like each ingredient has its own unique energy signature.
That's a great way to think about it. And we can't forget about candle magic. Different colors are used to symbolize different intentions. Green for prosperity, red for passion blue for healing. Each color carries its own weight.
Okay, this is all so intriguing, but I have to ask the question that I know is on everyone's mind. Do spells really work?
Well, from a purely scientific perspective, definitive proof of spellcasting is still elusive. But within the context of Wiccan beliefs, spells are about aligning oneself with natural forces to try to manifest desired outcomes.
It sounds kind of like setting an intention and putting it out into the universe,
Yeah,
attracting what you want through focused thought and action.
you could think of it that way. And according to Wiccan beliefs, the success of a spell depends on several factors. You need a clear intention, the ability to visualize what you want, and an understanding of correspondences.
Correspondences.
Things like timing a spell with the lunar cycles or choosing certain herbs and crystals for their associated properties.
So it's not just about chanting a few words and hoping for the best. It sounds like a lot of thought and preparation goes into it.
It does, and you might be surprised to learn that many spells are actually quite DIY, using everyday materials and focusing on personal empowerment.
DIY spells. I've never thought of it like that. Can you give us some examples?
Sure, there's a simple love spell that uses leaves and a green thread to try to attract a desired partner.
That sounds pretty easy.
Or there's a healing spell that uses not magic and a blue cord to promote well-being.
Not magic. I'm intrigued.
And there's even a spell to break a bad habit that involves planting hyacinth bulbs and visualizing yourself becoming healthier.
So even if science hasn't fully caught up with the idea of magic, exploring these practices brings up some really interesting questions about human intention and our connection to the world around us. It makes you think about what we might be capable of if we could really tap into those unseen forces.
Exactly. And it leads to an even bigger question. Could engaging with these practices, even symbolically, help us access a deeper level of potential within ourselves and the natural world?
That's something to think about for sure. What else can you tell us about the world of Wicca? What other fascinating elements are there to uncover?
There's so much more to explore. And, while we're focusing on Wicca today, it's important to remember that it's just one expression of these modern magical traditions.
Right, there's a whole wide world of practices out there.
Exactly, each
Yeah.
with its own unique beliefs and approaches. But going back to Wicca for a moment, you mentioned that it's a religion.
Yeah.
So does that mean that there are deities that Wiccans worship?
That's a great question. I'm really curious about that spiritual side of Wicca and how it connects to the whole practice of magic.
Well, most Wiccans honor both a god and a goddess.
A god and a goddess.
Yes. Often referred to as the horned god and the triple goddess.
Okay, I've heard those names before, but tell me more.
So the horned god represents the wild, untamed aspects of nature and that whole cycle of life and death. And then the triple goddess.
The triple goddess.
Yeah, she encompasses the maiden, the mother, and the crone. It symbolizes the different phases of a woman's life and also the cycles of the moon.
So it's about recognizing the divine in both masculine and feminine forms.
Exactly, acknowledging that balance between those energies.
Does this differ between Wiccan traditions?
You bring up a good point. The specific deities that Wiccans honor can vary depending on the tradition.
So there's not like a strict Wiccan pantheon.
Not really.
Yeah.
Some might focus on deities from Celtic or Norse mythology, while others might have a more generalized understanding of the god and goddess.
It seems like there's a lot of room for personal interpretation and connection within Wicca. What would you say to someone who's just starting to explore these ideas? Where do they even begin?
I always encourage people to approach this with an open mind, but also with a healthy dose of skepticism.
So don't just blindly believe everything you read.
Right. Do your own research, explore different perspectives, and see what resonates with you personally. It's your individual journey.
It's about being an active participant in your exploration. What resources would you recommend for someone who wants to learn more?
Oh, there are so many resources out there. Books on Wicca, herbalism, crystal healing, you name it. And of course, don't underestimate the power of the internet.
Yeah, there's a whole world online.
But be discerning about your sources. Double check information, especially online.
Always good advice. So let's say someone has done their research and they're feeling drawn to Wicca and they want to start incorporating some of these practices into their life. What would be a good starting point?
I think one of the simplest but most powerful ways to start is by connecting with nature.
Makes sense, since Wicca is all about recognizing the divine in the natural world.
Exactly. Spending time outdoors, observing the cycles of nature, appreciating the beauty around you. It's a great way to start aligning yourself with those energies.
So you don't need to jump into complex rituals right away.
Not at all. Starting small can be really impactful. You could create a little altar space in your home using natural elements like crystals, flowers, herbs.
That sounds lovely.
Or you can try a simple meditation, focusing on grounding yourself, connecting with the energy of the earth.
Those are great suggestions.
Mhm.
What about spells? When is someone ready to start experimenting with those?
Spells are definitely something to approach with caution and respect. Remember, they're about working with energies, and it's crucial to have a good understanding of the principles involved before you start trying to manipulate those energies. It's
Hmm.
not like you see in the movies where you just cast a spell and poof, everything changes instantly.
So it's more than just wishing for something to happen.
Exactly. What would you recommend as a first step for someone who is ready to explore spell work?
Hmm, that's a good question. What do you think?
Well, there are many books that offer guidance on spellcasting, including collections of spells for various purposes. But again, I would encourage anyone to thoroughly research and understand the principles behind spellcasting before diving in. And most importantly, listen to your intuition.
So don't feel pressured to try anything you're not comfortable with.
Exactly. Trust your gut on this one.
Earlier, we talked about the persecution of witches throughout history. Do you think there's still fear and misunderstanding surrounding magic and witchcraft today?
Sadly, some of those negative stereotypes and misconceptions do still linger, fueled by media portrayals and just a lack of understanding.
It's a shame because, as we've been discussing, Wicca and many other magical traditions are about promoting harmony balance, respect for all beings.
Exactly. It's about embracing personal power, not about controlling or harming others.
Do you see these perceptions changing at all?
I do think there's a positive shift happening. As more people learn about these practices and share their experiences, hopefully those outdated fears and misconceptions will continue to fade away.
Shifting perceptions takes time and understanding. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. What are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners are walking away with today?
I hope they're leaving with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to explore different perspectives. It's about challenging assumptions and recognizing that there are many ways to connect with the divine and find meaning in life.
It's about remembering that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
Beautifully said. And while we focused on Wicca as a modern example, remember it's just one path among many. The world of magic is vast and diverse, with countless ways to explore the mysteries of the universe and connect with the divine.
It's about finding what resonates with you and creating your own unique path.
Hmm.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to continue exploring this world?
Keep an open mind, do your research, and trust your intuition. You might be amazed at what you discover along the way. It's a journey of self-discovery, and there's always something new to learn and explore.
I love that. So before we wrap up, I want to touch on something we talked about earlier, the idea that science hasn't fully caught up with the concept of magic. Do you think there's a possibility that science will eventually be able to explain some of the things that we currently consider magical?
Hmm, it's definitely an intriguing thought. What we consider magical today might be perfectly understandable through a scientific lens in the future.
It's true. Think about something like electricity.
Exactly. Centuries ago, people might have seen it as this mystical force, but now we understand how it works and we use it to power our lives.
It makes you wonder if the same thing could happen with things like spell casting or energy healing.
Hmm.
Maybe someday we'll have scientific instruments that can measure these subtle energies that people talk about.
I wouldn't rule it out. And even if science never fully explains everything about magic, I think there's something beautiful about embracing the unknown, acknowledging that there are forces at work in the universe that we may never fully comprehend.
I agree. There's a certain humility in that, in recognizing how much we don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe that sense of wonder and mystery is part of what makes exploring these topics so fascinating. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this world of magic, what's the one thing you hope our listeners are taking away from all of this?
I hope they're leaving with a sense of curiosity and an openness to exploring different ways of understanding the world. Magic, whether you believe in it literally or just appreciate it symbolically, it really invites us to challenge our assumptions and consider possibilities that might be beyond our current understanding.
It's about pushing the boundaries of what we think we know and being willing to step outside of our comfort zones.
Absolutely.
And for anyone who wants to continue exploring, remember all those resources we talked about,
Mm.
books, online communities, local groups. There's a whole world of information out there waiting to be discovered.
And don't forget the most important tool you have, your own intuition. Trust your gut. Let it guide you on this journey of discovery.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been a truly enlightening conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those minds open, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into something fascinating.